Under the Radar.
You're listening to Money FM 89.3, and it's now time for Under the Radar with me, Chua Tian Tian. Now, we're going to talk all about succession and business leadership development today. Now, while departments such as HR may be labeled as cost centers, effective talent development and management can reap tangible outcomes for businesses. According to a report by the Boston Consulting Group in 2015, talent magnets, or companies that rated themselves strongest on 20 leadership and talent management capabilities, have increased their revenues 2.2 times faster and profits 1.5 times faster than their peers with weak practices. And on this front, the Singapore Business Federation's Alliance for Action on Business Leadership has released a report to call out opportunities in the local talent development landscape that also put forth recommendations on what key stakeholders can do to help Singaporeans earn their place at the corporate leadership table on a global stage. But really, what is in it for businesses to train locals for leadership positions? How will local leaders make strategic developments and decisions differently from their other global peers given their understanding of the local market? And how will training local leaders position firms for longer term growth? Well, joining us today is Frank Khoo, Head of Asia, Talent and Learning Solutions at LinkedIn, as well as Albert Sui, Executive Director, Advocacy and Policy at the Singapore Business Federation. Well, welcome both to the show.
Thank you, Tian Tian. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you guys on board. So Frank, let's start with you for the first half of the conversation or so. I'm sure most of us are no strangers to LinkedIn. You're a social media platform for professional networking, also the world's largest professional network, more than 850 million members worldwide. But we want to hear from you. How would you define LinkedIn's value proposition, business model, and your industry positioning then?
Right. Well, LinkedIn is rather unique as a social media network in that we are actually more of a professional network. And so, content on the platform is less about entertainment and more about the professional context. I know it's a bit boring to many of the listeners, but really, I think what we try to do is really to get people to connect professionally with the peers in the same sector or even different sector, get informed with the industry information, learn new skills, and also to be more productive in their work and advance their career. And so what we want to do is really to help people, to connect people to opportunities, at the same time connect companies to talent on the platform.
Yeah, so I would say you guys also have the first dips to whatever employment trends there is. And so, Frank, let's zoom in on the topic of leadership succession and talent development. How does it work at LinkedIn? How do you train your workers to take on leadership roles both at the regional and global level?
Right. I think for us, we always leverage our culture and values in employee development. So what we want to do within our culture is really to provide a trusted and caring environment and a fun environment for people to be able to transform themselves. And so in this connection, we have people to take ownership of their career development as well as leadership development. Now, along the way, we provide a lot of enabling facilities like training programs, getting them to gigs, getting the transfers across different functions and also across different countries so that they can actually develop and evolve their leadership skills. But most importantly, what we want to do is to empower them to be able to make decisions and lead the team forward. And we have this value called dream big, get things done, and have fun. So at the end of it, we want to have people the leaders who can rally the team, but at the same time have fun together.
Okay, so dream big and get things done and have fun. And Frank, as much as we like to have fun, we love to talk a lot about money on Under the Radar. So take us through how much does it cost LinkedIn to invest in talent development and succession for locals in particular? And what is the value of training and developing leaders locally? Is it the fact that maybe they have a better understanding of local markets? And should that be the case, how have business decisions made by local leaders in terms of product offerings, pricing, marketing, driven tangible outcomes for the firm?
Well, Chin Chin, in Singapore, I think we're very fortunate as a company because Singapore is the Asia Pacific headquarter for LinkedIn. And by and large, we have a diverse talents from all over the world located in Singapore. And this becomes a natural learning ground for leadership. At the same time, what we try to do is to really make sure that people have opportunities to interact with one another so that they can also develop the leadership. Now, what we always try to do for our leaders is really to look at three areas. One is leading themselves. In other words, developing growth mindset, developing self-awareness so that they are able to understand what they are good at, not so good at, to be able to undertake self-care during difficult situations. And then the next level is leading others. And this is really to develop the compassion, the humility, to be able to understand what the team members needs and be able to support them and rally them to do a great job together. And once you've done that, what we want to do is really to fulfill our vision of creating economic opportunity for the global workforce. And that is really to contribute back to the community. And within LinkedIn, we encourage all our people to volunteer under the social impact program called LinkedIn Coaches, whereby we go about supporting people who are in underrepresented communities or underprivileged communities so that they can actually be able to develop the full potential.
And don't mind me following up. You talked about locating talent from different places all around the world within the APEC headquarters here in Singapore. You talk about structuring the career path of the workers such that they get to experience and take on leadership roles at different junctures. In terms of the investment that you need to put in upfront, would you be able to share with us what is the outlay?
Oh, we on an annual basis, we always have a budget for people development. But what we try to do is really to measure the business impact. I think Tian Tian, you shared about the returns on investment in leadership development, and we have seen huge returns, especially during this environment where there is the macro headwinds. At the same time, this environment is ever changing. Skills obsolescence is key, so we are always in the process of building and developing our leaders. Now, but what we want to ensure is that our people know that it's not just a company's responsibility, that everyone really take ownership of their career as well as the skills so that they can actually have an evergreen path towards being a leader or even in the career development.
So let's look at the ROI. As we mentioned earlier, companies with strong talent management practices can increase revenue 2.2 times faster, profits 1.5 times faster than their peers with weak practices. And if we look at companies with proactive succession planning, that could increase valuation and investor returns by 20 to 25%, according to the Harvard Business Review. What metrics would you use to determine the success of training development then?
Well, eventually, it's really to see how people are able to align and build upon our overall strategic goals. And as you know, the environment keeps changing. So what we want to do is for people to be agile. And we do have financial measurements. Development of leadership actually contributes significantly to the financial measurements. In fact, LinkedIn is part of Microsoft. So we do have a profitability commitment to Microsoft as well. And so far, even in the midst of the ever-changing economic environment, especially in the nearer term, the tech winter, our company has been evolving very well. And that's because of the leaders that we have that are able to manage compassionately, bringing the team along the ups and downs of the economic cycle.
Okay, and meanwhile, Frank, as the world's largest professional network, I assume that you do have the first dips on employment trends as well. So take us through how different is it for LinkedIn to train local leaders in the different geographical markets you are in as far as Asia is concerned? What are the major challenges or gaps for Singapore in particular?
Right. What we try to do is make sure that we have not just a diverse, but an inclusive environment where people can have opportunities to live to their full potential. And so along the way, what we do as for our company is provide opportunities and transparency of opportunities within the organization. So for instance, if there is a role in Hong Kong, for instance, people, whether they're based in Singapore, in Sydney, in Kuala Lumpur, can actually have the opportunity to apply. And we do this by making it transparent within the organization and in fact on our LinkedIn learning platform. And along the way, there may be gaps, for these people in accessing the particular role. And we try to break capabilities down to skills so that people who wants to access to certain opportunities but has a skills gap can actually go into our LinkedIn learning environment and build the skills so that if not now, 1 year later, they can actually have the similar opportunities.
Right. If you're just tuning in, we're now speaking to Frank Koo, Head of Asia Talent and Learning Solutions at LinkedIn. Also joining us, Albert Sweet, Executive Director, Advocacy and Policy at the Singapore Business Federation. And Albert, let's get you into this conversation as well. I understand the Singapore Business Federation has developed a report to call out opportunities and gaps in the talent development landscape. So take us through some of your key findings there.
Thanks, Tian Tian, and Frank as well. Fascinating to hear about how LinkedIn does the talent development. For the Business Leadership Development Insights report that we launched
Mm,
this morning, there are generally three opportunity areas, as I would call it. The
yeah.
first is really to move in tandem with Singapore's strong emphasis on innovation. So we have very strong institutions that excel in supporting innovation. But we find from our research and from our engagements with the business leaders that there is scope to foster a stronger risk-taking and entrepreneur dimension amongst the upcoming Singaporean leaders. The
Mm,
second area is really to tap on global firms pivoting to Asia for growth. Asia's
mm,
GDP itself is poised to become half of the global economy within this decade. So, business leadership, obviously, in this part of the world, will become more critical than ever. But the region itself is not homogeneous per se, but a very dynamic and diverse one. And what we see is that it is exactly this diversity in which
mm,
Singapore leaders can shine. Many of us grew up multicultural, multiracial, some even multilingual, from
mm,
early days. I think we have the instincts and the savvy to navigate such a diverse operating environment. We are
mm,
also a very pragmatic and highly educated people. So putting together these skill sets, I think we can grow to become more visible in the global
mm.
leadership landscape to help companies, both homegrown and international,
Yep.
navigate Asia. And the final area is really about tapping the wide range of training and mentorship programs available. And to maximize the benefits of these programs, there is scope for us to bring them together and enhance collaboration. And this is where platforms like the Singapore Business Federation, as the Apex Business Chamber, comes in to help connect the dots, bridging relationships between different communities and to uncover new partnerships.
Right. And so, Albert, one of the key recommendations that the SBF put out is for the government to advance local talent development by Singapore based companies. That's by incentivizing firms to track, manage, and increase the representation of Singapore talents in senior leadership roles. How can this be done realistically then?
Yeah, like what Frank alluded to earlier, it
Mm,
is all about everyone doing their part and being reflective and taking ownership of their career choices and development, the individual, the corporation, as well as some government support. In particular, corporations, obviously, companies play a critical role in nurturing and developing local talent as drivers of growth, at both the local, regional, and global levels. You ask about the international one. So for companies with multi-geographical operations anchored in Singapore, what we
mm,
hear is that they can better identify and cultivate high potential Singaporeans for future leadership roles. And they can do this by facilitating more bilateral exchanges between their
mm,
regional offices. And this approach is actually something that makes commercial sense as well, encouraging the exchange of best practices from the established markets while fostering the infusion of fresh ideas in the emerging ones. And the modalities for such exchanges can range from actual overseas posting or in-country deployment to just cross-jurisdiction projects. So coming back to the idea of how the government can incentivize some of these, I think the toolkit of our government agencies remain very relevant and wide-ranging. And there is scope for them to look into, for example, expanding some of the eligibility criteria for talent
mm.
development schemes. And this could actually include those who are mid-career local talents with more than X number of years of working experience so that
Right.
the pool of these local talent can expand. And another dimension from what the government could possibly do to support
Mm-hmm.
the enterprises is to
Mm,
look into their assessment criteria for multinational corporations here with access to incentives and support schemes, and to have a conversation with them to include local talent development plans and progress matrix into their time in Singapore.
Right, and Albert, I have about 30 seconds to go, but very quickly, let's get through this. Another recommendation by the SBF is for companies to have an intentional roadmap for attracting, retaining, and enabling local talents with international experience. And I understand SBF is pushing for the government to step up support in reintegrating spouses and children of Singaporeans based overseas. Very quickly, what can you tell us on this front?
Okay, yeah, I hope to do it in 20 seconds. We engage a lot of business leaders, and we hear this common
Yeah.
pain point, their aspiration for expanding some of the existing immersion programs run by the Ministry of Education, for example, for their children to attend classes at a local school for a short period of
Mm.
time during their overseas term breaks, for example, and also for the government agencies to find ways to perhaps organize more cohort type of engagements for the children, either organizing them by time zones or age groups to allow us to connect these overseas based Singaporean children with the local children and the local teachers. And this will allow them to understand each other's experiences and mindsets better, and to hopefully allow them to reintegrate better when they return to Singapore.
All right, thanks a lot, Frank and Albert. That was Frank Hu, Head of Asia, Talent and Learning Solutions at LinkedIn, and Albert Sui, Executive Director at the Singapore Business Federation. Thank you both for joining us on Money FM 89.3.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Money FM 89.3.